Hi, this is Jan Sierek, Wisconsin Facet CEO, and on behalf of the entire Wisconsin Facets staff and also the Wisconsin Special Education Mediation System project staff, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. Today's webinar is Wisconsin Special Ed Mediation Systems IEP facilitation. And we're going to do an overview of the facilitated IEP option for early conflict resolution that Wisconsin has available for parents and schools through the WSEMS system. You're going to learn how to request a neutral trained professional, a facilitator to help the IEP team with the IEP process. And so presenters today are myself, and as I said, I'm the CEO and founder of Wisconsin Facets and also a 20-year partner in the Wisconsin Special Ed Mediation System. I'm also the co-director of the Wisconsin Facets Parent Training and Information Center and also the co-director for the Region 4 Technical Assistance Center for Parent Centers in the Midwest. Joining me today is Nissan Barlev, who's the Special Ed Director for CESA 7. And he is also a 20-year partner in the Wisconsin Special Education Mediation System. He serves on the Governor's Council on Autism, Wisconsin Insurance Commissioner Council on Autism, the Wisconsin Universal Design for Learning Stakeholders Advisory Group for the Department of Public Instruction, the National IDEA Partnership Training Team on Dispute Resolution, and chairs the State Superintendent's Blind and Visual Impairment Education Council. So with that, we're going to get started, and I want to just let you know that Wisconsin Special Ed Mediation System, or we call it WSEMS, so you're going to see that WSEMS on slides, and that's what that stands for. The system has been funded by the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction with an IDEA discretionary grant to CESA 7 since 1996. And for all of these years, the charges of this grant has been to administer the WSEMS system throughout the state of Wisconsin, to provide an impartial roster of neutrals to assist in the resolution of special ed disputes, to provide training and outreach about the system, which is obviously what we're doing today, and to collect longitudinal data over all of these years for ongoing evaluation of the system. WSEMS is really a very unique system, and I think this is important to know if you're ever considering using the system, but it's a unique system that's been nationally recognized by the Center for Appropriate Dispute Resolution in Special Education, which is short for, or long for CADRE. And this is a national center that's funded by the Federal Department of Education. And recognized as just one of 4 state systems that were considered very effective in its usage and outcomes. WSEMS was selected especially because of our successful involvement of stakeholders. Our system was designed by a 17-member group of key stakeholders back in 1996. Half of them represented parent groups and half of them represented school groups. And the Stakeholders Council still exists today and continues to serve as a collective advisory body for our system. Our system is also unique nationally because it's led by a team that models partnership and provides oversight to the system. And that includes Nissan, which I already explained to you as the Special Ed Director for CESA 7, which oversees 38 school districts in northeastern Wisconsin. And Nissan represents the school perspective on our partner team and is one of the founders of WSEMS, along with myself. And I'm the parent of a young adult son with autism, and I represent the parent perspective on our partner team. Nina Meyerding is the 3rd member of our team, and she is a dispute resolution professional and represents that perspective on our team. She's an internationally known mediator, lawyer, and university professor who has conducted over 4,000 mediations and trained thousands of people in almost 50 states as well as internationally. Staff on our system includes Jane Burns from Burns Mediation Services. She is our system administrator for WSEMS and also the intake coordinator. So she's the one that when you call our office, she's the person that you speak to about your issues. She's been with the system since 1997. She can explain when you call what's involved with IEP facilitation or mediation, depending on what you're looking for. And she helps people choose a mediator or a facilitator. And the other staff person that we have as part of WSEMS is Nelsinia Robleski, and she's a parent herself and also a member of our Wisconsin Facets administrative team. But she's the multicultural outreach coordinator for WSEMS. So I'm going, and just to remind you that these handouts are located, you can download them right off of the webinar today, so you can make sure that you get these. Okay, Nissan?
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Jen. In your packet, you have a brochure about the system, and the slide shows the same chart that is in the front of the brochure. This diagram shows the 7 dispute resolution options that are available to parents and schools in relation to special education in Wisconsin. With all 4 options that are in light green, the parents and schools will have more control over the outcome as they are working together to solve the issue. This is simply called self-determination. As you move more to the right on the chart and look at the darker green slides, the situation changes because someone else will have control over what happens. None of these dark green options that you see on the slide are available from WSEMS. Our focus is on trying to help parents and district staff work together to create agreement and prevent disputes, to reduce conflict, and to keep decision in the hands of the parents and educators who care about what happens to the child. When someone else makes a decision, people tend to get more stuck in their positions because they want to show the decision maker that they are right and the other person is wrong. The process becomes more of a win-lose situation. People can become angry, and a great deal of money can be spent arguing. The 3 light green options available through WSEMS, the IEP facilitation, mediation, and the facilitation of resolution meeting, can be especially effective when used in the earlier stages of a conflict, as they can help parents work together before the conflict has grown. It is also important to understand that IEP facilitation, mediation, and resolution meeting can be used at any time and do not need to follow the order on the slide. In other words, do not necessarily flow through the stages in linear fashion. For example, a parent may request mediation and then go to IEP facilitation, or a parent may write an IDA complaint and then go back to use an earlier process such as mediation or IEP facilitation. So we'll move on to the next slide in terms of what is IEP facilitation. So IEP facilitation, as you saw in the previous diagram with the arrows, is one of the earliest options for conflict prevention that is available through WSEMS. A trained, impartial professional from WSEMS attends the IEP meeting to help the IEP team by facilitating the IEP process, but not participate in content discussion. For example, the role of the facilitator is to create an atmosphere for an amicable discussion, but not getting involved in deciding the need for an aid or the need for extended school year services and so on. IEP facilitation may be requested for any IEP meeting, whether it is an initial meeting, IEP reevaluation, annual IEP, or any other combination of the IEP meeting. And probably the most important part that we to let everyone know is IEP facilitation is a free options for parents and schools in Wisconsin. It was the intent of Congress to remove any fiscal barriers for parents and schools to resolve disputes. Go ahead, Jan.
So, even though there was no federal law requiring facilitated IEPs, we wanted to let you know that our Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction has really seen the positive results of the mediation process provided through WSEMS and believed that offering the additional dispute resolution option of IEP facilitation would really be a sound investment in encouraging parents and school districts to work together even earlier than mediation. Wisconsin Special Ed Mediation sought advice about the IEP facilitation program from our group of stakeholders in 2004, and they actually were the ones that developed the guidelines for the facilitated IEP option. Again, those stakeholders are half parents and half people that represent school districts. In 2004, WSEMS made the IEP facilitation option for early conflict resolution available statewide to schools and parents, and we did an 18-month pilot project at the beginning. The process was then evaluated and determined by our partner team, and the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction and the Stakeholder Council all thought it to be very successful. So it has been available and funded by DPI ever since then. So we're really excited that it's available. Facilitated IEPs have been found to increase the likelihood of a successful IEP meeting, to prevent disputes from developing, to resolve existing disputes earlier, and to save time and money. And further, both parents and districts believe that the presence of a facilitator was important in keeping the meeting focused and productive. And you can see on the slide the quote from Barb Van Haren, who's our Director of Special Education for Wisconsin, and saying that the IEP is the cornerstone of special education and serves as a critical communication tool in the education of students with IEPs. Wisconsin DPI values IEP facilitation as a means to provide a collaborative process for families and schools when differences in communication arise. Okay, on the next slide, back when IDEA was reauthorized, the Presidential Commission that was working on drafting IDEA 2004, they recognized the value of an early dispute resolution and using a facilitator for an IEP meeting. So you can see on the slide what they said. Early processes such as expert IEP facilitation to increase collaboration and problem-solving skills of school staff and parents can help avoid expensive disputes and promote efforts to help students. The Commission obviously supported the idea of encouraging states to develop earlier processes for resolving conflict for schools and parents. Unfortunately, when IDEA 2004 was passed, a requirement for states to offer the option of facilitated IEPs did not make it into the law. So many states have not yet provided this option to parents and districts. We're just really excited that Wisconsin is one of the states that is, decided that they would continue or, start offering it.
Thank you, Jan. So how can you tell if mediation or IEP facilitation might be the better option for you? So IEP facilitation is good to use when parents or the school district think that an IEP meeting is going to be difficult to manage, such as when there seems to be lack of trust between the two parties or problems that are expected with communication, and before an impasse, stopping point, brick wall has been reached. The WSEMS stakeholders group determined that a IEP facilitation would be able to use for any IEP, as we mentioned before. Such a meeting can be used when there is no existing problem with special ed issues. However, the parties believe that a IEP facilitation could be even more constructive and productive than a meeting without a facilitator. And then the next slide will tell us a little bit about the differences between the two options. It is important to understand whether IEP facilitation or mediation is the best option to use. There are two different processes. there's no such thing as mediated IEP, even though you may have heard the term before. By understanding the differences, parties, with the help of Jane Burns, our system administrators, can make a choice as to which process at this particular time has the best chance of success for them. So here are some of the differences between IEP facilitation and mediation. In facilitation, the facilitator helps with the meeting process and help prevent the conflict from growing. In mediation, the mediator helps parties work toward resolving specific disputes. In facilitation, the facilitator usually works with the parties before they have reached an impasse and before the discussion is difficult and complex. Mediation, the mediator usually works with the parties after they have reached an impasse. In facilitation, there is a 3-hour time limit to spend with the parties, whereas in mediation, the mediator has no time limit for how long they can spend with the parties. In facilitation, the IEP process itself, going through the various required IEP form, determines the meeting agenda, whereas in mediation, the mediator helps the parties create an agenda. So as we move to the next slide, which is a continuation of the differences, in facilitation, the facilitator assists the communication among the team members as they are working to develop the IEP document. In mediation, the mediator assists in trying to help the parties resolve their underlying issues and emotions. In facilitation, the outcome is either that the IEP document is completed or is not completed at a meeting with the facilitator. Whereas in mediation, the outcome can either be a written mediation agreement that resolves the dispute, which is legally binding contract in state and federal law, or they don't have a written agreement. In mediation, Wisconsin has a confidentiality law, 904.085, that is tested and judges uphold. In facilitation, when we started conducting the facilitated IEP, we added confidentiality language to our agreement to facilitate. This confidentiality by contract is different than confidentiality by statute, because confidentiality in the IEP is protected only under IDEA in Wisconsin Chapter 115, and these do not provide the same level of confidentiality as 904.085. However, the Wisconsin administrative law judges who hear due process cases for special ed have said to WSCMS that a decision to honor confidentiality provision in agreement to facilitate would be done on a case-by-case basis. They said that they could not promise that the confidentiality provision that we had the agreement would be upheld. Jan?
So Nissan was telling you the differences. I also wanted to let you know that I typed in the chat box a link that we have on the WSDMS website that's a really short video, I think it's like 6 minutes or something, that talks again about the differences between mediation and IEP facilitation. So you can, check that out as well. So what are the similarities? Although there's a lot of differences between facilitated IEPs and mediation, there really are a few similarities. Both processes model good communication. Both encourage that active listening take place. Both help the parties look at common goals. Both keep the processes focused on the student and moving forward so that they don't get bogged down. And both processes help parties kind of depersonalize any conflict by discouraging language that would be blaming or personal attacks, and both help to manage the group dynamic. Okay, for those of you that are following along on slides, we're on slide number 11 now. If you think that a facilitated IEP is the right option, based on some of the things that we've said so far, then the parents and school can make the request for a facilitated IEP either jointly or individually. The form that you see that you can use is right on the slide. They can call WSEMS to request a facilitated IEP. This form is available online. As you can see, we've got the email or the link to it on the slide. Or you can write to WSEMS, P.O. Box 107, Heartland 53029. And a copy of the form is one of the handouts that we have available for you today that you can download right from the webinar program. When the request is made, Jane Burns, who we mentioned is our system administrator and intake coordinator, she will talk to you about how a facilitator can be helpful. She's also available as a resource throughout the whole process, and you can call her anytime with questions. If one party, so like say, if the parent requests facilitation, then Jane Burns will contact the other party, like the school, and they will have 5 days to respond, either yes or no. Because the facilitated IEP process is voluntary, if either party, so if the school or if the parent says no, then the facilitated IEP option would not be able to be used with an IEP. So the IEP would be held without using that option. All right, the next slide is who actually participates in an facilitated IEP. It would be the IEP team members who are normally required to be invited to the IEP meeting, plus the facilitator from WSEMS. And the facilitator, however, you have to keep in mind, is not a member of the IEP team. It's like an extra person, but is not a member of the team. There are no additional requirements as to who attends, who has to attend or not attend an IEP meeting, a facilitated IEP meeting.
Thank you, Jen. So who arranges the facilitated IEP meeting? That meeting is held at a time and place that's acceptable to all IEP team members and the facilitators. If the date has already been set for an IEP meeting, Jane Burns will find a facilitator who is available on the date and who the parties agree to work with. If the date has not been set, then the selected facilitator will work with the parties, with the parents and the schools, to find an acceptable date and time. In either case, the school district is responsible to send out the IEP invitation letter. As we move on to the next slide, who are the facilitators? So a list of highly qualified, experienced neutral is a key to a great system of dispute resolution. The impartiality of the mediator is critical. WSEMS has 22 trained neutrals who serve as both mediators and facilitators. WSEMS facilitators are not current employees of a school district, state of Wisconsin, nor are they currently with a parent advocacy organization. The roster that we have in Wisconsin of our WSEMS mediator facilitator is quite diverse. It includes mediators who are attorneys, social workers, psychologists, former educators, mediator for business, small claims court, hospitals, farm law, etc. They live in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Illinois, and travel throughout the state. They all have in-depth knowledge and experience in mediation and facilitation. If they do not speak the language of the parties, interpretation is provided through the WSEMS grant. In other words, another free service to both parents and schools in Wisconsin. All the WSEMS neutrals have training in special education laws, mediation, and IEP facilitation. People often ask if a facilitator should be an expert in special education. However, it is important to understand that facilitators and mediators may not give legal advice or express a legal opinion about the issues. Sometimes parties prefer facilitators who are highly experienced in cross-cultural issues or dealing with high emotions, are bilingual, or are especially skilled in working with large groups, or have experience as educator or as parents. Each situation is different, and Jane Burns can assist the parties in the screening process to identify someone who can work effectively with them. Information about each neutral is provided on our website, wfcms.us. And Jen?
Sure. So at the start of the IEP facilitation, or sometimes before the meeting, the facilitator has all of the IEP team participants sign, and the facilitator also signs what we call the WSEMS agreement to use the WSEMS facilitated IEP process. And you can kind of see the beginning of that document on the slide. Plus, there is a copy of the agreement to use the process also as one of your handouts today. The agreement mainly outlines that everybody agrees to use the process, that they agree on the facilitators that's going to be doing the facilitation, that they understand the role of the facilitator, including that the facilitator can't provide legal advice or advocacy for any of the participants. The agreement also includes that the parties understand that they can go on to use mediation instead if they want. And the agreement also confirms that the parties understand that the process, as we mentioned earlier, does not have any of the confidentiality protections that are provided under the Wisconsin statute, that 904.085, that covers mediation and makes mediation be a confidential process. All participants, including the facilitator, are asked to complete surveys after the facilitated IEP meeting. A research methodologist analyzes the data for us and gives WSEMS feedback, which the WSEMS team uses to keep improving the system. You can see the comments on this slide. We've got comments from one of the evaluations or the surveys. That's feedback from the school district. They said, "This was my first time experiencing a facilitated IEP, and I just feel that this facilitator did an excellent job hearing both perspectives and clarifying material for the parent. The facilitator also reassured me as a teacher, which was great to see." So as you can see from the slide, the teacher had been worried that she would not be supported in the IEP process, and the facilitator reassured the teacher in her role, as well as clarifying material for the parent in the district.
Okay.
And we've got a couple more comments for you, which I think is important for you to know what people are saying about the process.
Right, and here is a comment from a parent, from a family, that basically said the pre-existing condition, lack of procedural assessment by the school district, led to a confusion that kept unfolding as the participants chimed in one at a time, but the facilitator helped clarify. Trust was on a way of being rebuilt, and there was more hope for better meetings, the future, or conclusion of meeting. And that's feedback from a family. The facilitator was able to keep the meeting focused to avoid confusion between the parties. The improved communication helped build trust for future communication between the parties. And the next slide is, again, summarizing issues and building trust from a school district. Facilitator did a great job of summarizing the parent concern and what the school district was offering. The parents seemed to trust him, which is what we needed to begin the IEP. Sometimes having an impartial person summarize the issues and concern of both the parent and the district created a more collaborative tone. People often get less stuck in their own position and listen better to the other person's issues. Jan?
Okay, and we've got one more comment from a family. This was my first facilitated IEP, and I was very impressed. I will recommend it to other parents, other families. So, just trying something for the first time really can be scary and overwhelming, and most participants in the IEP facilitation are very satisfied with the process, really intend to use it again if needed, and say that they will recommend it to other families. We wanted to give you a little bit more data from our outcomes, and again, we're keeping this longitudinal data since 2014, so 11 years worth of data shows that our system for IEP facilitation has been good. Here's our cumulative data since then. 91% of the meetings held resulted in an IEP being either developed or revised. The most common disabilities that come to ask for a facilitated IEP, autism and emotional behavioral disabilities. The average length of an IEP facilitation is around 3 hours, and we get an average of 35 requests a year. This year it's a little bit higher already. The average time that a team met before using an IEP is, as you can see, 1.8 times, and I think this speaks to the fact that people know that the next IEP is probably going to be challenging and difficult, so they're thinking, well, maybe we've already met almost 2 times, and we'd like to try a different approach. So, again, to emphasize the fact that, if you think a meeting is going to be challenging, definitely consider using a facilitated IEP and a facilitator so that you avoid having to do it 2 or 3 times. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next slide, Nissan.
Thank you, Jan. So the most common educational issues that brings people to a IEP facilitation is placement, accommodation issues, behavior intervention plan, and functional behavior assessment. The most common meeting process issue identified by facilitator that led to the need for IEP facilitation were help maintaining forward movement at a meeting, that's about 75%, and communication breakdown, 73%, help conduct the meeting, 63%, help understanding perspectives, 57%. Other data that we collected indicate that 87% of the participants would use this process again. 91% felt that the process developed a satisfactory IEP, and 89% of the participants were satisfied with this process, and 86% would use the same facilitator again. And as we move to the next slide, thank you. So we have another resource that we have developed over the few months that we're delighted to share with you. With feedback from parents, teachers, administrators, advocates, as well as our WSMS roster of mediators and neutrals, we have developed a new training. It has practical strategies for each stage of the IEP meeting, the preparation, the meeting itself, the follow-up, and tip after the meeting. This valuable resource is on our website. It's called How to Conduct Friendly and Productive IEP Meeting. It's on 2 locations on our website. If you look under the Multimedia tab, you will find a trainer of trainers that includes a audio. I believe it takes over 3 hours of trainers in this area. But if you go to another tab on our website, which is wscms.us, you look under publication, you will see a PDF document of all the notes of the slides of how to conduct friendly and productive IEP meetings. As well as we're going to have a live webinar on May 9th from 12 to 1 on the same topic. Jan?
Yeah, Nissan, we have a question that came through and I'm going to just read the question. issues of facilitator slash mediator knowledge around best practice slash science and evidence of appropriate instruction that meets a student's learning needs, the potential frustration for the family when the needed expertise is not in place, as the system does not have that component despite other numerous things about it. And I think that, you know, what people need to know is that our facilitators and mediators, they're required to do a 5-day training that's given by WSEMS when they first come onto our roster, and that training covers, you know, how to mediate and facilitate cases in special ed and a lot of issues that are in the special ed arena. You know, we have panels of parents and educators that speak to them about some of their challenges, and we cover the mediators and facilitators are required on our roster to have an annual update training, and that's where we, you know, update them on, you know, current changes in the law, for instance, the, you know, like the new specific learning disability category and some of the issues surrounding that. But I think it's, and you know, any changes in IDEA or state law, we make sure that they know about. But because their role is to facilitate the process and the discussion, you know, they are not authorities, you know, they're not somebody that is going to make, you know, provide legal information or to provide best practices information. They will help ask those questions as may be appropriate, like they may, you know, if people are, you know, having a discussion about, I don't know, some reading program that's most appropriate, you know, they're going to, they may ask the questions about, well, how are we going to find out, you know, somebody that will give us information on what's an evidence-based practice and things like that. So, or the same thing with legal information. They won't interpret the law, but they will, you know, possibly bring up, you know, where can we go to find that out, or how can we further define that or something. So they're not going to, and they don't have the expertise to do that. They know the language, they know the, you know, questions to ask. I hope that answers your question. I mean, do you have anything you want to say about that, Nissan?
Sure, thanks, Jan. Yeah, that's a very good question. And it's really described the difference between self-determination and an arbitrator making a decision that's going to be imposed on the two parties. If we are seeking self-determination, in other words, parents and school can work through a process to find a solution that will be acceptable to both of them, then mediation is the answer. And no, we do not necessarily have to have a mediator that is knowledgeable of every facet of the law. We need a mediator that can work with parents and school district, a mediator that is familiar with the terminology of special ed, but his skills are really more in terms of allowing the two parties to go through a process where they come up with a self-determination solution. On the other hand, the role of an arbitrator, a judge, a hearing officer, is to be knowledgeable and to make a decision. But by doing that, you're removing the self-determination from the parents and the schools.
Yeah, and I think that the facilitator may recognize that, you know, it's an issue and just is going to further, you know, ask questions to help the parties, you know, kind of figure out that they might need an outside consultant or additional information. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next slide. I hope I answered the question for the person that asked that. And again, if you have any questions, you can certainly type them in the chat box. And then we just, this is our last slide, and we just want to encourage you to use the WSEMS website. It is really rich with information. You'll find on the website the biographical information about all of our roster mediators and facilitators. Each one of them kind of talks about their philosophy, talks about their background, has pictures. Some of the roster neutrals even have a short video on their page. And because parties really, schools and parents really get to select who's going to be their facilitator or mediator, it's really important that they feel comfortable with whoever that person is. So that's why we try to provide a lot of that information on our website. Also, frequently asked questions on mediation and facilitated IEPs is on the website. All of the forms that you need to request a facilitated IEP or mediation is on the website. Tons of resources, and I mentioned Cadre before, and the Cadre website, if you go to that, there is a lot of information about effective communication and collaboration and mediation and facilitation. We also have on our website in the upper corner, as you can see, it says WSEMS and Espanol, so that we have an almost identical website to this one if you click onto that in Spanish. So for those families that need that, or anybody else, they can just click onto there and get all the information in Spanish. WSEMS can be contacted to schedule a training for groups of parents in schools about facilitated IEPs or any other types of early conflict resolution. We've got the phone number on there. You can request that through Jane Burns. And, you know, I think in closing, we really want to say that, you know, even though conflict can be really frustrating and emotionally draining, it also provides an opportunity for greater understanding and informed partnerships that, you know, in the long run advances the best interests of children with disabilities. So we encourage you to consider the option of a facilitated IEP if you're worried about an upcoming IEP meeting. I'm just going to check to see if there's any more questions on here, and I don't see any. Oh yeah, and so the person that asked that other question said, yeah, that answered her question, so that's good. So you can see the contact information at the bottom to call our service and ask for more information about facilitated IEPs if you want. And again, you can download all of the handouts for today through the webinar or by calling the number that's on that screen right now, or you can also call the Wisconsin Special Education Mediation Project Office, or the FACET's office. I can't do two things at once. I'm typing the number. I'm typing the number in there for everybody. This concludes our webinar for today, and I really want to thank you so much for joining us. We have over 100 scheduled trainings and webinars for this year, including at least one WSEMS workshop training for most of the months in 2016. So please check our website calendar and register for upcoming trainings, and please, again, watch for the very short evaluation that's coming to you shortly. And thanks very much for participating today. Thanks, everybody.